today we're going to read Hansel and Gretel. If you watch the movie Mr. Levenshaw's Library, you might see Hansel and Gretel in the movie. Let's get started.
Hansel and Gretel by Susan Jeffers. Hansel and Gretel by Susan Jeffers. At the edge of a very large forest, there once lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. A terrible famine came to the land, and the woodcutter could not even provide for his family. Do you know what a famine is?
A famine?
A famine is when your family does not have enough food. It's hunger. If you are famished, it means you are very hungry. One night he lay awake worrying. What is to become of us? He said to his wife. How can we feed our poor children when we have nothing? I'll tell you what, she answered. Tomorrow we'll take the children out into the forest and leave them there. They won't be able to find their way home, so we shall be rid of them. No, I could never leave my children alone in the forest, said the woodcutter. The wild animals would soon tear them to pieces. What a fool, the woman said. Then we will all die of hunger. And she gave him no peace until he consented. But the 2 children had not been able to sleep, and they learned what their stepmother had said. Gretel wept bitterly. All is over for us now. Don't cry, Gretel, said Hansel. I'll find a way to save us. So it sounds like the evil stepmother has come in this book. But let's keep reading. When the woodcutter and his wife were asleep, Hansel slipped out the door. The moon was shining brightly, and the white pebbles around the house gleamed like silver coins. What is that when they gleam like silver coins?
That's a simile.
That's a simile. Hansel stooped down and gathered as many pebbles as his pockets would hold. He went back to Gretel. Go to sleep, he said. We will not perish in the forest. At daybreak, the woman came to wake them. Get up, you lazy bones, she ordered. We're going to go fetch wood. She gave them each a piece of bread. Here is something for your dinner, but do not eat it right away, for it's all you get. When they had gone a little way into the forest, Hansel stopped to look back at the cottage. He did it again and again. What are you doing? His father asked. Keep up with us. Oh, father, said Hansel. It's my white cat. It's sitting on the roof saying goodbye to me. Little fool, the woman said. There is no cat. It's the morning sun shining on the chimney. But Hansel had not been looking at the cat at all. See, each time he stopped, he dropped a white pebble on the ground to mark his way. Remember those pebbles that were gleaming in the night? Well, once in the forest, their father made a fire to warm them. The woman said, Now rest here while we go cut wood. We'll come back later to fetch you. Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire and soon fell asleep. When they awoke, it was dark night. Gretel began to cry. How shall we ever get out of the forest? But Hansel comforted her. When the moon rises, we'll find our way out. Hansel took his sister by the hand, and they began to walk, guided by the pebbles that glittered like bits of silver in the moonlight. What is that if they glittered like bits of silver in the moonlight? There's another simile. Okay, so there they are. Do you see them following? They're little bits of silver. All those pebbles. At daybreak, they finally reached their father's cottage. You bad children, said the woman when she saw them. Why did you sleep for so long in the forest? But their father was glad, for it had hurt him to leave them behind. Later, Hansel and Gretel heard the woman talking. Soon we will have nothing to eat. The children must go away. There is nothing else to be done. The woodcutter tried to protest, but it was no use. When everything was quiet, Hansel tried to go out for more pebbles, but the woman had locked the door. In the early morning, the woman made the children get up, gave them each a small bit of bread, and led them to the forest. As they walked, Hansel dropped breadcrumbs on the ground. The woman brought their children to a place where they'd been before. Stay here, children, and when you are tired, you may go to sleep. We are going to cut wood, and in the evening we'll come back to fetch you. At dinner time, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel. They went to sleep, and the evening passed, but no one came to fetch them. It was dark when they woke up. Hansel comforted his sister and held her close. Wait until the moon rises, he said, then we can see the breadcrumbs that I scattered for the path. As the moon rose, they started out for the breadcrumbs, but found none. They did not know the birds who lived in the forest had eaten every one. So the pebbles worked, but did the breadcrumbs work?
No.
How are they going to find their way out? They walked all night and the next morning, but could not get out of the forest. They were very hungry. They began to fear that if no one came out, they would perish. What do you think perish means?
Die.
Yeah. Then at midnight, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird. Hansel and Gretel followed it until they came to a little house. Wonderful, beyond their dreams. What would you say if you saw a house made of candy?
I would technically eat it.
You would eat it. It looks like a gingerbread house. The house was made entirely of cake. Its roof was icing. The windows were sugar. The children were so hungry they did not hesitate at all. Hansel stretched up and broke off a piece of the roof, and Gretel went to the window and began to nibble. Then a gentle voice called out, "Nibbling, nibbling like a mouse. Who's that nibbling at my house?" All at once the door opened and an old woman hobbled out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that the food they were eating fell from their hands. "Ah, dear children," the woman said, "come and stay with me." She took them by their hands and led them in the little house. A fine dinner was set before them. After they had eaten, and she took them to 2 small beds. When Hansel and Gretel fell asleep, they felt as if they were in heaven. But the old woman was really a witch. She had built the cake house, especially to lure children to her. What do you think it means to lure someone?
Take them.
Well, to make them want to come to you. She built that house especially to trap them. Witches have red eyes, and they can't see very far, but their sense of smell is as keen as an animal's. And they know when a human is coming close. The witch liked children best of all. Whenever she snared one, she cooked it and ate it and considered it a grand feast. When Hansel and Gretel were asleep, she laughed wickedly. "Now I have them. They shan't escape me." Early in the morning, she shut Hansel up in the stable and barred the door. Though he shrieked at the top of his lungs, she took no notice of him. Then she took Gretel away. "Get up, you lazy bones. Fetch some water and cook something for your brother. When he is nice and fat, I will eat him." Gretel began to cry bitterly, but she had to obey the witch's orders. Every morning, the witch hobbled to the stable and ordered Hansel to hold out his finger so she could feel how fat he was. But Hansel held out bone instead. The witch's eyes were dim, and she thought the bone was Hansel's fingers and wondered why he didn't get fatter. When 4 weeks had passed, she could wait no longer. "Now then, Gretel, fetch the water. Fat or thin, I will kill Hansel and eat him." How Gretel grieved. She cried, and the water streamed down her cheeks. "We will bake first," said the witch. "I have heated the oven and kneaded the dough. Creep in and see if the fire is blazing." And she pushed Gretel toward the oven. The witch meant to shut the door and roast her, but Gretel saw what she had in mind. "I don't know how to get in," she said. "How am I to manage?" "Stupid goose, the opening is big enough. See? I could fit myself." And Gretel gave the witch a push. She banged the door and bolted it. The witch howled. Gretel ran to the stable and opened the door. "Hansel, Hansel," she cried, "we are saved. The old witch is dead." Hansel rushed out like a bird from a cage when the door was opened. Like a bird from a cage. A simile. In the witch's house, they found chests full of pearls and precious jewels. Hansel filled his pockets. Gretel filled her apron, and they hurried away. As they walked through the forest, the trees and hills became more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house. Hansel and Gretel rushed inside and threw their arms around their father's neck. The poor man had not had a single moment of peace or pleasure since he had deserted his children in the forest. While they were gone, his wife had died. Gretel scattered the pearls and jewels on the floor. Hansel added handful after his pockets. From that time, their troubles were ended, and they all lived together in great happiness. This fairy tale tells me that even though there was an evil stepmother and an evil witch, we ended happily